Hello, hello. I am so excited for you to listen to this episode today with Michelle Stiles. So, Michelle is a private practice academy alumni. She is based in Syracuse and really specializes in working with people struggling with OCD and panic disorder. And Michelle has had a very similar story to me in that she built her private practice part time in the evenings, on the weekends, while working a full time job in community mental health, and then eventually transitioned into full time private practice that was insurance based, and then eventually transitioned to fully private pay. And at this point, she has a full caseload. She's earning $200 per session and is just absolutely thriving in private practice. And this is a question that I get a lot from folks who are just sort of like in the beginning stages of thinking of starting their own private practice, as like, how do I do this when I have a full time job? I really rely on this income. What are the steps that I can take to build in a sustainable way? And so I'm really excited for you to listen to today's episode and sort of hear about Michelle's journey and sort of the different stops that it has taken along the way to get to this point where she has a absolutely thriving private pay practice. All right, let's jump right in. Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So let's jump in. Tell folks a little bit about like who you are, who you work with, where you're located, sort of like the work that you're doing now in private practice.
Okay, I'm Michelle. I specialize in treating panic disorder, OCD, and generalized anxiety disorder. And I'm actually located in like actual upstate New York, like way, way upstate, like almost southern Canada, Syracuse. Um, and I provide virtual therapy like across the state, but a lot of people come to see me in person, and I use ERP and CBT. Um, and my practice is all like cash pay.
Amazing. Out of curiosity, like what percentage of your clients are local and see you in person versus virtual, kind of across the rest of the state of New York?
Um, a lot of them are local. Even my local folks will see me virtually,
Yep.
but probably like a 60-40 split. Like I get 60% that are probably, well, this week 60% was in person, maybe even more than that. I had a lot of people,
Really?
I was really lucky, come to see me in person. Yeah. But then the other people will see me online because I'm, across the state, or a mixture, right? So I'll have like moms who I work with who like ideally would like to come see me in person, but like as you know, like their kids get sick, whatever, and they're able to
Mm-hmm.
just swap to virtual so that they don't have to cancel the whole session.
Yep. I love that flexibility too.
Yeah.
And your private pay rate is $200 a session. Is that right?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, I think that that's huge too. Just to like showcase for folks, you don't have to live in like the highest income area of your state, right? Being in Syracuse, New York, not, New York City metro area, and still charging $200 per session out of pocket, I think is so huge.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think that I also thought that before,
For sure.
but I was wrong.
So I know it's been like a building and some time to get to this point, right? Where you're like, I have a beautiful office, I charge $200 per session, I have a full caseload. And I'm really excited for today's episode to sort of rewind and take it back for people, because I think that, you and I had pretty similar beginnings in our journey of like not ripping off the band-aid and doing it all at once, right? And really showing that you can have this end goal of a successful practice, and it's okay if there's like steps that you take along the way to get there. So let's sort of rewind to the very beginning. Tell us a little bit about where you were working, what life was like, what was going on when you sort of had this inkling of maybe I should start dipping my toes into a private practice.
Oof, way, way back. So it was like the middle of the pandemic. I was working at a community mental health agency. Everything was virtual at that time. And I was just at a point that like I was so burnt out. I was seeing so many clients per week or trying to meet these productivity standards. And honestly, I just did not, like, I was not happy with it. And I thought to myself, Jesus, I just spent like 100 grand on this education, and I think I'm gonna go back to bartending, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
figured I
Was
might
that
just
your
go
first
full.
job out of grad school or?
My first job out of grad school was actually I took a break in between grad school.
Yeah.
So I was in New York City for a bit, like in that short break. So I actually worked at a methadone clinic in the South Bronx.
Yeah.
And then I came back here, and then yes, that was like
Okay.
kind of within that still. I was still getting I had my license, but like that's where I finished up my hours for my permit.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And so you're working this job in community mental health, not really liking it. Um, what were your thoughts about like starting a private practice at that point?
Um, they had kind of shifted. I remember a school psychologist, like a couple years prior to that, was trying to convince me to lease her office and like start a private practice. And I remember saying to her, like, I would like literally go broke. Can you imagine me collecting money from people? Like, I can't do it. Like, absolutely not. It wasn't even an option. But then I got to that point and I was like, okay, well, I need to do something different. Like, either I start a private practice and it goes, or it sinks and I like try a different career, basically. I was kind of like at my wits' end with it.
Yeah. And at that point, I assume that you decided to like jump in and start seeing clients. How did you sort of like figure out those first initial steps? Where did those first few clients come from? Were you doing like evening, virtual? Did you end up renting the office? Like, what did that sort of beginning stages look like?
So I actually opened my practice part time while I was still working at the
Mm-hmm.
community mental health agency. So like I would clock out of my like 9 to 5, and then I would have clients in the evening on Monday and Tuesday nights, and then on Sunday afternoon. And I
Yeah.
had that for like a long time until I got to the point where like I had so many clients in my private practice and like requests for consultation that I really needed to like sink or swim. So I had to either
Yeah.
go all the way in or not, and I decided to take the leap. And
Awesome.
so
And were those insurance folks at that time or private pay?
I probably had like one private pay, but most people were from insurance. Like I worked with Headway, and back in the day when Headway was like you could just put a opening in your calendar and it was totally full.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for like the first year, I was all like I mostly a lot of insurance folks.
Yep. And it sounds like not a ton of marketing either at that point.
No, it's mostly Psychology Today and mostly Headway. I mean, Headway back in the day when there weren't as many therapists, like it was really great. You just put a slot up and you're good to go.
Yep. Cool. Um, and so what was that like for you to sort of have this like busy, demanding full-time job where you were already kind of burnt out trying to meet like productivity standards and then add on an extra like partial 3 days a week where you were working in your private practice?
I feel like you would think it would be really exhausting, but when I look back on that time, I really remember like kind of looking forward to like the evening when I'd be working with these other clients, right, who really want to
Mm-hmm.
show up for therapy. And I remember just like they would push me to be a better therapist. Like I would be preparing and being like, okay, and then like after session, like figuring out what I might say the next week and like prepare. So although it was like a lot, I guess when I look back, it that work didn't seem as hard because it was just so like I was in my groove more.
Yeah. I had such a similar experience, and that to me was like what made me realize I needed to quit my job. I wasn't at the point that I was like, I hate my nonprofit job when I decided to start a private practice. For me, I was getting ready to supervise like an entire team of clinicians and hadn't done clinical work in quite some time. And so it was really like my own imposter syndrome of like, what the heck am I going to tell these people? I'm so far out of the game that drove me to start seeing some clients. But I just noticed like I would wake up in the morning to do my regular job and I would dread it and I'd be kind of like scrolling while on meetings and like, oh, I need 3, 4, 5 cups of coffee to get through the day and just like really kind of checked out and uninterested. And then I would be so excited to be like, I'm going to work from 5 to 8 p.m. and see therapy clients. Like, this is a treat. This is the best part of my day.
Yeah.
And I think that that was like so telling for me that I had like found what I wanted to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is just so cool. Okay, so you're making, I don't know if you're allowed to share the rates that you were getting paid from insurance from Headway at that time,
Oh,
or if
I
you want to
don't know
give
if
like
you're
a
allowed to
range-ish. Yeah.
either, but I can tell you this that
Okay.
I had no idea what to set like my private pay rate at because I like really most of the therapists that I knew were in community mental health just as like unhappy as I was.
Yeah.
Um, Or there were therapists who were in private practice that I was like, oh God, like I can't charge as much as they do because like I'm just starting this. As if like therapy is different from one setting to the
Yeah.
next, right? I still have the same license. But anyway, I remember this is like embarrassing to say, but I charged $70 because that was less than what I was getting from insurance. Because I was like, well, if
Yep.
someone's gonna come see me cash pay, I have to charge less than insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, little
Which is,
Michelle.
yeah, which is like wild, right? Because it's almost like the opposite. If they're
Yes,
gonna go out of pocket, they're like willing to pay more.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And so at this point, when you were seeing clients like Monday, Tuesday, and Sunday, were you at the point like financially where it was okay for you to quit your full-time job and say, like, I have enough for right now, like I'm okay to make that switch, or was it still sort of like a financial risk at that point to lose that income?
Oh, 100% financial risk. And I
Yeah.
was like, one of the biggest things that held me back was actually thinking about paying for medical insurance. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh man, like that's gonna take my whole paycheck. And then I like actually got on the phone with the lady in New York State at that time. I was in the marketplace. So it was actually based on how much I made anyway. So
Yeah.
it worked out fine.
Yeah. Did it end up being more affordable than you thought, it sounds like?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I had like a maybe 6 month period where my husband was unemployed last year. And he was like, I've always been on his insurance since going into private practice. And based on the income, it was not good. We were paying like $2,000 a month for insurance or something crazy at the start of my pregnancy. And I was still getting, I thought we picked the best plan. And my hospital or my doctor's bills were still like $700 a visit. I was like, what the heck is this?
Oh no.
But I think Florida also has more problems with healthcare than New York does, probably.
Yeah, I would believe that.
Okay, so you decide, this is a financial risk. Insurance is going to be expensive, but I'm really running out of time to see these clients, and it's the work I want to be doing. Um, what was that process like in terms of quitting your job and like giving notice and going full time?
First I actually went down to 4 days out of the week instead of
Yeah.
five, so it was like a pretty slow. Like I was nervous for
Yeah.
sure. But then like I just had to make that jump and like I feel like almost like cross my little fingers and hope that everything worked out fine. But I
Mm-hmm.
really was at a point that it was even less about the finances and more just about my own life. Like I was not happy and I tried it. I tried multiple community mental health agencies and
Yeah.
working in those and none of them were like the therapy that I do now.
Yeah. And once you made that transition, like what was that like for you to kind of rip the band-aid and be fully in it?
Probably equally parts exciting and terrifying.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things that I remember. I remember calling my friend Kim and being like they actually like wanted to come see me and they said like I remember what you said last week. I was thinking about it. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? Right?
Yeah.
And I remember like just always thinking like I wasn't doing enough paperwork because like
Mm-hmm.
you actually just do what's appropriate for the client in front of you instead
Yeah.
of all like the grant funding like questionnaires that have nothing to do with them. Um, so it was really like exciting, but also like there was still a lot of unknowns, right? Even though I was building my caseload, like it wasn't full yet, and I didn't have a lot of money. So like
Yeah.
in order to invest in my business, like that was scary. Um, so yeah, I mean it was exciting to be able to decide like what I was gonna do when, but also like almost like more pressure to work probably even harder than I did at the community mental health agency, but it was different because I was working like everything I was reaping all the profits from, right?
Yeah.
So and it was my choice.
Yeah, I think especially when you start off virtual, it's like the profit margins in private practice can be so high. So it's really nice when you're in that beginning stage of like every new client you get is like a substantial difference to how you feel financially with your take home.
Yeah.
So I know you said that you started to see clients on the side in COVID. Do you know like at what point it was that you ended up making the leap into full time? Just like year or month and year?
April, either 2021 or 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
So about like a year or two later.
Hmm.
Yep. And then it was December 2022 when you decided to join Private Practice Academy. What was sort of like going on in your practice at that time that you were like, something still needs to shift here? Like, what made you decide to kind of want to get that support?
Um, I think that it was more that I wanted to charge more, right?
Yep.
And also that I didn't want to take insurance. I don't think I ever wanted to take insurance, but I especially didn't hearing about like clawbacks and like I was just so nervous, probably just from coming from like a community mental health agency where you're
Yep.
always like getting audited, and like it took a long time for my body to like recover from that. I think.
For
So I
sure.
didn't want to take insurance, but I knew that I really needed to do something different, like in terms of marketing, because I wasn't doing a lot.
Yep. And so at this point, your caseload is like 99% insurance based, and clients are coming from like Psych Today and the insurance platform only, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And then once you joined PPA, what did that transition look like to sort of like getting off of insurance? Actually, let me even back up. At this point, do you remember like where your income was at or like how things felt financially, kind of being full time with an insurance based practice?
Um, at that point, all I can tell you is that I remember looking at PPA and thinking like, this is either the best or the stupidest decision I'm ever gonna make, right? Because it like now that price point doesn't look as like big because I just have more established now. But at
Yeah.
that point in time, I was like, wow, like that's a lot of money. Like I really like. I remember going to your webinar and like I had already made my decision, but
Yeah.
like I was like, I'm gonna do my due diligence, right? And
Yeah.
like do all the things. And I remember um like just being like also excited, right? And like actually diligently like going through all the modules, which I am shocked that I did, which is great.
I love that. I feel like
Yeah.
that's really the key to getting the results. And it's something that a lot of people forget. It's like,
Yeah.
I haven't gotten any clients yet. And I'm like, you've watched 20 minutes of 12 hours of training.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that. Okay. And so we're still at a point where like finances are like they're feeling heavy.
Mm-hmm.
What did that look like for you to start to shift things in your practice away from insurance to a higher rate? Um, to actually like step up and say like I'm gonna really own this and like market myself for real.
Really scary. I'm noticing a pattern that this was another one that was like, this is either really a smart idea or a stupid one, but
Yeah.
we're gonna find out, right? And I guess my backup was like I could always go back to insurance, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's easy breezy to get on the like to take insurance. Um, and I worried that people would be like, at that point I was at $175, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I was terrified that people would be like, and you expect me to pay $175, blah, blah, blah. But then I had told my clients, and probably like half or more than half came with me.
Uh-huh.
And the other folks, like, I knew that they would want to use insurance, which is totally fine. And I had great clinicians to send them to.
Yeah. And so, did you end up like telling your existing clients that you were getting off of insurance panels before sort of like starting to get new private pay people or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we started first with like the existing folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like most people sort of wait to do like, let me get some proof of concept here with new people and make sure that this is okay before they risk like disappointing the current folks. Talk to me about like that decision and sort of what motivated you to say, no, we're going all in with this. This is the goal that I want to do here.
That's a good question. I think that in the time I just figured I would do them both in one swoop. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna say I'm not taking insurance, and also like this is what my fee is. And I guess thinking back, like they didn't really know what my private pay fee was because they all paid
No.
insurance. Wasn't thinking about that at the time, but yeah, I mean, I think that I just wanted to do it all once instead of having like multiple what I thought were going to be awkward conversations or
Yep.
difficult conversations. So yeah, I think that was what I was thinking.
Yeah. Were you surprised that like half of the people ended up staying or
Shocked.
yeah.
Very shocked.
I'm curious what your game plan was if they weren't going to stay in your mind. I don't know if you had one, but
I think that, like, I guess always my game plan was to go back on insurance, right?
yeah.
If they were like, no. Um, but yeah, I wasn't real well prepared for sure.
Yeah. I feel like I had so much anxiety about making that transition. And I remember talking to my dad about it, and he was like, wait at least like a year to get off of insurance panels. Like, make sure that this works. This has to be some sort of like fluke that you're getting these clients. He was just like really in shock. And I waited. I basically like built my case like 2 or 3 times where I was like, kind of similar to you when you left your full-time job. Like, I am out of hours, I am fully full, like, I need to open up time. And so I quit my full-time job. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to start taking only new private pay people. And I waited until that was like totally full. I was like, I don't want to have to turn away private pay people to then tell my existing insurance clients, like, hey, we're going to go private pay. And it just felt like I needed to have like the ultimate safety net first of like everything will be okay regardless of what happens here. But I really admire that you were like able to trust the process and say like I don't need to get to the point where I'm 100% capped out again in order to tell people like this is the change that I'm going to make. And I think it's so cool that it paid off and that half of your folks ended up staying too.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to say that, like, um, you amongst like some other therapists, like actually, like not people that I even knew in real life, right? It was all on
Yeah.
Instagram and being like, oh wow, like they can do it, and like you were one of the first people to really like even talk about numbers,
Mm-hmm.
which was really helpful, right? I mean, I was over here charging $70, right?
Yep.
And I had no idea, right? So yeah, I'm glad it worked out too.
And so at this point, maybe half your caseload cuts in half, but it sounds like your rate close to doubled ish at this point, getting off of insurance. What was it like to actually start to get new people to say, like, yes, Michelle, I want to work with you, private pay, 175 a session? Was that like just as easy as with the existing insurance folks, or was it a little more difficult?
Um, I'm trying to remember back. I feel like that was more difficult because I wasn't confident yet to say 175.
Yeah.
Right. So it was like the last thing that I would squeeze in there and be like, is that okay? Like, not sure.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that it was harder like with newer people because I just wasn't confident yet.
And I think too, if I remember correctly, like I feel like you've gotten a lot more clarity with your niche over time as well. And I wonder if that has played a big part in it. Like with existing clients, you already had a lot of like trust and rapport, and they were seeing like, oh yeah, this is really valuable. Like Michelle's a great therapist for me. But from like the outward marketing side on new clients, it was like a little harder to show that at first without a ton of clarity on your niche there.
Oh yeah, for sure. My niche was like a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started, I didn't know. Like I said anxiety, right, which means like all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I really, really struggled to like. It was hard for me to buy into the idea that you should be like niched down.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I realized that like yeah, marketing wise it does make the marketing easier, but it really just makes like clinically me as a therapist better the more that I
Mm-hmm.
can niche down. And then I can get on those phone calls with people and they're like, unfortunately struggling so much with OCD or with panic disorder. And I can confidently say, like, yeah, I do think I can help you. And I do believe it's worth the rate that I pay because
Yeah.
otherwise you're just wasting your time with like a general therapist and like you're probably going to come back to see somebody like me anyway.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, you also were doing like couples therapy too in the beginning, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we were like
Yes.
anxiety and couples, kind of like speaking to a little bit of everybody in the marketing.
Yes.
I'm curious with like the OCD and panic stuff, like has your clinical approach changed? Was that part of niching down, or was it always kind of like you had the skill set to work with those specific clients in a specific way, but you were just kind of like also doing some other stuff with other folks, or
I always kind of had like that CBT background, but now I really use a lot of exposure therapy.
yeah,
So I got specialized training in ERP, and like I get consultations and all of that stuff. So yeah, once I niched down and I essentially was brave enough to even work with OCD. I think
yeah,
before I was like really nervous, as I should have been, right? Like not everyone can treat it.
yeah,
But then once I actually got proper training and like I get to decide what I learn for my
yeah,
CEUs and all of that stuff, then yeah, like that's kind of how that happened. And I was like, I really love this type of therapy. It's very fulfilling, and I really love working with that population, right? Like those people are my jam. I
yeah.
love them.
Did you sort of like claim that niche first, or do this more like advanced training first and then sort of claim it?
The training first.
Yeah. So that kind of
Yep.
gave you the confidence to say, like, I'm going to niche down more and like really own this expertise.
Yeah, yeah. I think it even took me a while to be like, well, I have like one training, but I don't think I can do like ERP with like a real living person. Um,
Yeah.
so it took me a while to gain my confidence.
Yeah. Let's talk about like getting those new private pay folks. So I know that your Instagram has grown a ton. You're at over 3,000 followers now, which is amazing. What was that process like for you to sort of start showing up on Instagram, and what did it look like in terms of like getting results and needing a little bit of patience there?
Ooh, I needed a lot of patience there. First of all, I didn't like I used Instagram as a consumer, but I
Yep.
had no idea like how to post things because like even in my personal life, I didn't really like use Instagram the way that I use it now. So it took a lot of time like just learning, but also like just posting consistently and getting like comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Like when I
Yep.
think about exposures, like at this point, I think I have like over 600 posts. So like it's like a lot of exposures over time.
Yep.
So now it's not as bad. But I think that initially I also would take a lot of time to create a post and like really like try to have it be perfect. Not perfect, like I really wanted it to be good, I guess, and like well
Yep.
researched. And then I realized that like I wasn't like marketing to other therapists, right, to be my clients. Like
Mm-hmm.
I needed to talk to like the real people.
Yep.
So it took me, I don't know, like maybe after I did like the mastermind with you, I think it was like maybe within that mastermind that I got a client. So it was
Mm-hmm.
a while. Like it was like I was probably posting consistently for at least like 6 months.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And was that hard for you to kind of like show up in that time without getting that like instant gratification of like nervousness? I'm posting, client, it's worth it.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. I think that you actually helped me a lot with that when we kind of like talked about it and like and over time it's like it is really trusting in the process because now I think that people might not find me on Instagram, but then they can go to my Instagram page and just like get a better idea of like whether I'm competent, whether they can like listen to my voice for 50 minutes every week, all
Yeah.
of those things. Um, but I think primarily the other thing that I really had to shift was this idea that like getting clients from Instagram meant that like it had to be the client directly like reaching out to me because
Yeah.
I've had a lot of success more with other therapists seeing my content and being like, oh, okay, I'm gonna send like my OCD or my panic clients to Michelle.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that can be such like an underrated way to use Instagram, and I find a lot of the times like therapists almost say like those don't count, right? And it's like, oh no, it only counts when a client finds me and they book the intro call. But if they came from Psych Today or they came from a referral or whatever, like Instagram doesn't count then. And I think that it's like such a short sighted way to view it. because Instagram can be like a huge, huge, huge trust builder for people, whether that is a referral source. I think it's the best way to network, honestly, or someone from Psych Today, right? When you're scrolling through dozens and dozens and dozens of profiles and you land on someone's Instagram and you can actually like binge their content, hear their voice, see who they are, it just moves you like right to the top of their list of therapists that they're interested in.
Yeah, for sure.
Where do most of your clients come from these days?
Um, I think probably in the last 3 months, there's another OCD and anxiety specialist in Syracuse,
Yeah,
and probably most of my referrals have come from her, which
I
is
love
like
that.
another like shift that I had to do in terms of like networking and like being like nervous that there wouldn't be enough clients for everybody. Like she
Yep.
literally like that's where a lot of my referrals come from, or other therapists who
Uh
also
huh.
work with like panic and OCD.
Yep. And she just like has a full caseload and is like, you know, all of a sudden the inquiries I get to you.
Yeah,
I love that. How did you end up meeting her?
Instagram.
Yeah, very
Yep.
cool.
Hmm.
I think that that's like so underrated, like even as like a local referral source to connect with
Yeah.
somebody and to really stay top of mind for her too. And
Hmm.
let her see your expertise and you sort of like owning that, I think is so huge.
Yeah, for sure. She was one of the first people, because I think when I like thought that I was niched down as an anxiety therapist, like ERP is just such a different like modality to use, and she was one of the
Yeah.
first people to really talk about like treatment in the way that like I also thought of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to like connect over that. And when you think about OCD, right, you're not gonna send them to anybody. You want to
Yeah.
know that like the therapist really understands kind of what's going on, and I think that's what I was able to do in my content, so that she could feel confident to send people to me. In fact, like she said as much to me, which is like such a, for me it's like such an honor. I'm like, oh my gosh, you are like a superstar in my mind, so I'm so honored that you're sending me clients.
Oh, I love that so much. So I'm curious, like where things are at now, and we can be as specific or not specific as you feel comfortable with. But in terms of like income changes and having a full caseload at $200 per session, how are things looking now compared to like back at the nonprofit days?
Oh my god. I make at least like double what I made there, and
Yeah.
I don't work nearly as much. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I don't know if you ever had this at any of the places that you worked, but I remember we would have to be on call like at least 1 or 2 weeks out of the year, which meant like you had to carry the on call cell phone with you.
Yeah.
And as you know, like in nonprofits, turnover happens a lot. So it went from like 2 weeks to like, I feel like every couple of months you had to be on call.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking of like all the work that I put in, and I just made significantly less.
Yeah. How many clients do you consider to be like full now for you in private practice?
Good question. It depends upon like just kind of what's going on with my caseload, but per week, I really don't want to see like 25 would be my absolute max, but really ideally
Yeah.
I want to see maybe like 15 to 20
Yeah.
per
I
week.
love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
What does life look like for you outside of work with kind of like that more reduced session hours?
Um, well, my dad retired like almost when I like went into private pay.
Mm-hmm.
So him and I will travel Syracuse and check out all the different coffee shops. And I just spent 2 weeks in Italy with my family. Um, and yeah, I just have like more freedom for sure.
Yeah,
Um, and just like really genuinely, I think I'm just like a happier soul in
I
general.
love that so much.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I'm curious what advice you would give to anybody who's working a job, whether it's nonprofit, community mental health, that they hate and they're sort of getting this inkling of like, I want to start something on the side, but I just don't know where I'd find the time or it feels so scary. What advice do you have for them for getting started?
Ooh, I have so many things to say to them. But definitely like get support when you first like venture out. I think if I didn't have that when I started, it would have been easier to be like, oh no, this is too much. Like, I can't do
Yeah.
this. It's probably one of the best investments that I've ever made in my business. And I don't think that I would still be a therapist without it, right? I definitely would have been like, getting rid of that career, right? But I would have been missing out on so much. Like, I genuinely love my work.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that.
And then
Amazing.
probably the last thing that I would tell them, I run a local networking group up here in Syracuse with clinicians, and I'm like notorious for being like, I think you need to raise your rate. They like see me coming, mostly because like there's so much more that we have to do when we don't work at an agency that like that's all incorporated into your fee. And I don't think people should see more than 25 people a week. Honestly,
Yeah.
I don't really think you're the best therapist that you can be. Is like the nicest way
It's
that I
quite
can put
hard.
it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that'd be it.
I love that. So kind of do it, get support, and go for the fee that feels a little scary.
Yep.
And you'll kind of find a way to make that happen.
Yep.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. Remind everybody where they can find you and follow along on Instagram for all things panic and OCD content.
My Instagram handle is at panic and anxiety. And
Amazing.
I'd be excited if anybody came to see me there.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It was a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.